Okay, because of a special delivery I got actually on Halloween, I decided to take out a couple of my Atari collection here. Now, I've always been a big Atari fan back in the day. I still love Atari. I know it's not the same company now as it used to be, but I have my nostalgia value, and I still love my Ataris. My little dog Blue here, he's only 3 years old, but he's slowly becoming an Atari fan. He's waiting for me to go over and play some games he likes to watch. And here's my 2600, and it's a great system. There's a couple, I don't know if it's a couple thousand, but there's definitely over 1,000 cartridges for the 2600. Not only the original releases, but homebrews and like ROM hacks. And some of the cartridges have gotten very expensive. They're hard to come by, and some you can't get on cartridge at all. So that's where something like the Harmony and the Harmony Encore come into play. It's a great device that lets you load ROMs, homebrew ROMs, original ROMs, or hacks on an SD card. And when you put it in your Atari and turn it on, you get a nice menu, and you can select from the menu and play the game. You can see you just get a regular SD card, or this one's got the micro adapter because I have a micro SD card in here. You drop it in the top here, and you plug the cartridge in. He even has a header here for USB to do firmware updates when necessary. But it's very simple to use. Just plug in your SD card with your ROMs, and you're going to drop that in your cartridge slot, turn your game system on, and you'll get a menu and pick your game. Now to pick other games, you do have to turn your Atari on and off to do so. It's kind of a bummer, but can't have everything. But it's a great device. Now back when this came out, this was, unless it was in 2009 when it first was released, but mine does say 2009. There was a talk on Atari Age of a Harmony 2 that would let you play Atari 7800 games if you plugged it into your Atari 7800. Now he was working on a lot of years. He's run into some issues with memory chips causing corruption. He went through some hardware revisions, a few of them, to make some changes that he wanted to do. And the name of itself also changed. It's not called the Harmony 2, but it's called the Concerto cartridge, if I'm saying it correctly. The Concerto cartridge, staying with the musical theme. So when you have your 7800 here, which unfortunately did not get the same type of love that the 2600 did, it kind of came out at the wrong time. There was the gaming crash. Then Jack Tramiel purchased Atari and shelved it for a number of years. Nintendo came around. They changed their minds, but it was a little too late. Nintendo had the market locked up, and the 7800 never really took off. And the hardware was a couple years old, but it was still more than enough to deal with Nintendo, and had very good hardware inside. That's a whole nother story. But you can see here that the 7800 does play 2600 game cartridges and its own 7800 ROM cartridges. So if you had a 2600 game like Phoenix, you could simply plug that in, and it would act like an Atari 2600. Then you would take that out, plug in your 7800 game, and when you plug that in, you're playing a good version of Joust on the Atari 7800. And that's a very good port, by the way. I really enjoy Joust on this system. Now, the other cool thing is that the Harmony and Harmony Encore, when you plug them into your 7800, it will load those games. Now, you can't load Atari 7800 games, but you can play all the Atari 2600 ROMs, just as you could in a real Atari, with the system. But I always wanted to be able to play Atari 7800 games on there. And again, the Concerto cartridge, it's been a lot of years, still hasn't come out. So there's been some other options out there, or at least one other option anyway, other than using a Harmony cartridge to play the older 2600 games. So you can see here, this is the Mateos 16-in-1 Atari 7800 game cartridge. Now it's a little bit different than the Harmony in the fact there's no SD card on it, and you can't load as many as you want on it. Basically, you have this little switch here, which you can load up to 16 game ROMs in one mode, which is the standard memory. But if you do put it in the 128 mode, it cuts it in half, so it would be every other one you can load a game ROM in. And what he does is you have a little burner, so you connect this device up here, and you plug this into USB port, and you load one game ROM, then the next game ROM, and so forth. So it's a little bit slower, but I'm going to tell you, I honestly do like his devices. He's got the Atari 7800, the Atari Lynx, Magnavox Odyssey, Vectrex, and it's available now in mass quantities. You can order it and get as many as you want. It supports a Poki chip, so if you happen to have a spare Poki chip, you can drop that in and play games that support it. And so far, I've been very happy with it. Again, you can't load as many as you want, and you don't have an on-screen menu that you have with, say, the Harmony cartridge, but it does work. Now, what he did, one of the problems I know he was having with the Concerto cartridge was the different memory mappings. So what Juan did here with his Mateos 7800 Rewritable Multigame Cart is you have to strip the headers off of all the ROMs, and the extensions tell it what ROM scheme to use. So let's say you want to load Donkey Kong. So if you look down this list, Donkey Kong's right here. So it would be called Donkey Kong.48K, and so forth. You change that for all the different ROM types. If you want to play Commando with the Pokey chip, you would put in a .sgp extension to let it know it's got a Pokey chip. So again, these are pretty inexpensive. They're not too expensive to purchase. The only downside is you do need to make your own cartridge shell. That's what was available up until now, which is something I got, again, came literally on Halloween. And this would be what some people would have called the Harmony 2, but it's the Concerto cartridge these days. And it's not widely available. It's not mass produced yet. It's at a very small number right now because it's still really, I would consider it an alpha, maybe a beta. I'm still feeling for the one I got, it's more of an alpha. But it is an SD card unit for your Atari 7800 to play 7800 games. And you can see there is a header here for a Pokey sound chip as well. So both the Mateos and the Concerto cartridge both support that. The one big difference is obviously you can use SD cards and you have an on-screen menu to play your 7800 games on your Atari 7800. Now the other thing, and I have tested it, is you can also load Atari 2600 games. So he did add that feature. So you can load 2600 games and 7800 games on one SD card, drop it into your 7800 and select them. Now remember, this is a very early prototype. You can see, even this, you can see it's very individually made. It's still got a lot of flux and glues, stuff on the cartridge here. It is kind of sticky, and I tried cleaning some of it off, but I don't want to take too much time doing that because I don't want to take a chance of shorting something out. But it does not come with a shell. You can pay an extra $10 from him to give you a shell, or you can use your old shell as well. You'll have to cut out a spot up here for the USB header for firmware updates, and one here for your SD card itself. The Pokey chip would fit inside, I assume. I don't have one yet, but it looks like from the cartridge shell that it would fit in here without any issue, and of course it would with a regular like Commando or Bow Blazer card, so it should work. And you can see again the other side here, a lot of resins and glue still on here, so it's not meant for mass consumption yet. If you go to a gaming show, my friend David, who runs the Atari 5200 podcast, the new one, was on a waiting list, and he actually had someone go to one of the gaming shows, and they actually picked him up a cartridge, but he was on a waiting list, and he handed that spot over to me, and I was able to purchase this particular cartridge. Now this was $133 shipped to me for this, and the Mateos 1601 is much less expensive. But again, this is not mass produced yet at all. But you can see here it is next to the 7800, and the Pokey connector would face forward when you go to put it in the unit, like so. And that's it. So when you plug it in, you plug in an SD card, power it on, and you'll get, it's kind of hard to see here, but it says Concerto Love. It flashes for a few seconds and it runs off the screen. It was very hard to capture with a video camera on my CRT. So you can see here when you first turn it on and past that Concerto Love screen, he tells you this is a work in progress, and it is. It's a very early firmware, and a lot of things are probably not working yet. And you know, report stuff back to him, and he'll work on it. So that's the first screen you're going to see when you turn this one on, and you can see the Concerto firmware is 0.91, so it's an early version of the firmware. And there's three main options I have anyway. If you had no SD card in here, it would just be this little wrench, which when you go into that, it's like a little setup menu. And this was kind of glitchy for me. I was able to go down to about here, and if I went any further down, it would default back to the previous screen every time. So I couldn't really go down and try anything else in here. But again, it's a glitchy system right now, and I'm sure it'll be fixed in a later firmware. But you can see here, I did load an Atari 2600 ROM. If I go back 2 spots, you can see I loaded a folder called 7800, which I put a ton of 7800 ROMs in here. And my Atari collection of 2600 ROMs are in this folder. So I was able to go in, and I picked Donkey Kong BCS, and sure in fact it did load and played fine. Now, unlike the Harmony and Harmony Encore, which pretty much played anything I threw at it, this one did not. It was kind of hit and miss, on which 2600 games did run. But again, it's an early firmware, so you can't hold anything against him on that. But he is trying to implement that feature he talked about years ago, that's having a 7800 with a single cartridge that plays 7800 ROMs and 2600 ROMs with one device. So I was kind of happy that that was put in there. Now, when you're loading an actual 7800 game, when I said before about the Mateos 16-in-1, he wants you to strip off all the headers, and you manually have to put in as the extension which memory scheme it's going to use. Now, with his, he wants those headers. So he wants the ROMs to be in the Atari 7800 format so he can read the header. It does try to figure it out anyway. I had some ROMs here that did not have the 7800 header as a test, and some worked, some did not. But even some with the Atari 7800 headers worked, and some did not. But again, everyone, this is an early firmware, and you know it's a work in progress, so you have to take that into account. So you can see here I have a whole bunch of 7800 games here, some in bin format and some in A7800 format. And again, it was very hit and miss. I have not gone through a lot of them yet. I've only had a few minutes to really try it. I wanted to get this video really quick. You can even tell I'm talking super fast because I have a lot of other things I need to get done today, but I wanted to get something up there to just show everyone that this device does in fact exist. Now that we've seen Atari 2600 games work, let's load an Atari 7800 ROM cartridge. And here is a hack. It's called Asteroids Deluxe, which uses the original Atari 3D Asteroids and converts it to look like Asteroids Deluxe. And now let's take a look at a couple of other Atari 7800 programs on the Concerto cartridge. So just some final thoughts on this video about the Concerto SD card. Basically, would I recommend this? Right now, I would definitely say it's definitely for early adopters. It still has some ways to go with the firmware. It does work. It's kind of neat being able to load 2600 ROMs and 7800 ROMs with one card, have a menu to be able to select them, just like the Harmony and the Harmony Encore cartridge. But it is still very early. It's not really available yet. I know Fred is working on this as well as other devices all the time, so I'm pretty sure new firmware will come out that'll make it even more compatible. And it's definitely a nice design. But if you're looking for something right now that you can get easily to load just 7800 games on your Atari 7800, you might want to look at the Mateos 1601. I do have that as well, and it works fairly well. Don't have any problems with it. It's just not as convenient because you do have to load ROMs one at a time and select different memory slots. But it's not a bad solution, and it's a little more affordable. But I do think down the road, Fred will have a really nice device here to go with his Harmony and Harmony Encore, which is two devices that I absolutely love for my Atari 2600. So I'm going to be doing more videos on this down the road as new firmwares become available and see how the compatibility gets. So in the meantime, everyone, hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon. And remember, game on.